Hi submarine friends, welcome back to watching me build my diesel electric submarine. So today is not going to be a super productive day because I have to think and figure a little bit about what I'm going to do about an issue right here. But yesterday I got all my lights outside hooked up, so my red and green lights, so my navigation lights and my clear white light up top is mounted on a pedestal and it's all working. I'm pretty pleased about that. I've been stressing about that. I don't know why, but anyways, that's done. So I'm happy about that. So I can put it in the lake legally and use it if it happens to get dark. Anyways, what I don't like, I have a couple of things that I don't like that I want to solve before I launch the submarine. One is this engine door is held shut with a bolt right here. It's a 3/8 by 2 bolt, and so the way I open and close it is I just have a 9/16 socket on my little impact gun, and that's how I put the bolt in and remove the bolt to open the door. Now the door needs to be held tight against the seal to be effective for soundproofing, and the whole purpose of this engine bay was to make it quieter in the sub, because for those who have been following along, the engine used to sit right where I'm sitting and it was really quite noisy in here and I didn't like it. So I added this whole engine bay, which is in the water outside the submarine but inside the ballast tank. So I need to devise a way to latch this so that it's tight but can be opened quickly. It concerns me that if I have to open that quickly, I'm depending on this little impact gun to work perfectly every time, which it does. But in the world of submarines, you can't rely on that sort of thing. It has to be bulletproof. You can't rely on something like that. So, if there's an electrical fire or something going on inside the engine compartment, I need to be able to open the door really quickly. So that's one thing I have to figure out today. And the other thing that's bothering me, and I've talked about it before, is just going to open this for dramatic effect. Okay, so there is a couple of vulnerabilities inside the engine compartment. For instance, the cooling lines go through the hull in two spots, so the coolant leaves the engine, goes to the keel cooler, and then comes back in. If something failed there, I could have a lot of water coming in, and I could be cruising along not paying attention, and then the submarine is going to drop in the back, and that would be bad. Well, it would be bad if it became too severe. So the other thing is there's water pumping from my circulation pump into this engine bay to cool that first stage exhaust. If one of those hoses failed, or a weld failed, or something failed, it is super unlikely. I mean, how many times has the heater hose failed in your car? And there's no pressure. There's like literally 1 pound of pressure compared to a car. Same hoses. But anyways, again, you can't just dismiss that as being reliable in a car, so it should be reliable here. So what I have on the engine right now is a hot water or a temperature sending unit that if the engine gets too hot, it grounds. The sending unit creates a ground for a wire which is connected to normally an idiot light or a alarm of some sort in a car. So I have it hooked up to a really loud alarm up in my engine control box. So all the wiring and everything goes to one specific box, and the start button and temperature gauge and stuff is in that box. And it's on a cord, so I can move it around to work on it. So rather than complicate this situation, Well, the reason I'm telling you about that is I'm going to put, this morning I ordered a float switch for a bilge pump. So I'm going to mount the float switch in there, but I don't want to run another whole wiring and, you know, we want to keep this thing as simple as an army Jeep. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wire the float switch so that it ties in with the temperature switch. So I can tie into the ground so that the float switch will also create the ground to turn on the alarm. I mean, why not? What can it hurt? When I think about it, putting ground into a sensor that just grounds, you know, it's like taking a positive wire and touching the positive terminal on your battery. It can't do anything. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a float switch in, and I'm going to wire it so that when the float comes up, it grounds the same wire that goes to the temperature sending unit, and I'll actually use that as the junction box. I'll just put an eyelet on. I think it's an eyelet. I can't remember if it's a stud with a nut or if it's a plug-in. Either way, I'm going to tie into that so that if water leaks in there, it actually, it's going to have to be pretty darn sensitive because it's pretty, there's a lip here, so this can only hold about an inch of water in the very bottom, but that should be enough to trigger that switch. I'll make sure it does. Even if I have to orient it a certain way so that it triggers it. I could use a water sensor, I suppose, but I hate relying on electronic parts. Like a float switch is pretty darn reliable. So that's what I'm going to do. But I still have to figure out how to keep this door closed nice and tight without just running that bolt in. So what I was thinking is if I put a long stud in here, so I just take a threaded rod and I put it in that bolt hole. Let me just close that door. So you see this can swing past a stud, right? And then with that stud sticking out, I was thinking about just a lever, and then I can have a hook here so it just close a lever and then another lever to hold it in place. I don't think I can make it over centering. I don't know, maybe somebody has an idea. I have to actually go help my son at work today. He's falling behind, so he needs some help. So I'm going to go help him today. So I have time to think about this today because I'm just going to be sitting in a machine all day. So that's what I'm up against. Oh, and the other thing I have to do is I put an extension hose on my second stage regulator for emergency breathing, and I have to find a little coupler pipe to couple the two hoses together. But other than that, boy, this is really, I'm just looking around at what has to be done, and I'm going to replace a plug in the bottom of the hull here because I had to weld up a plug because I ran out of plugs, and I had one with a little hole in it, it's actually that plug with a little hole in it is a restrictor from a hydraulic cylinder. So it's screwed into the hydraulic cylinder and then it restricted the oil flow. Anyways, that's what I got to figure out. And I want this done before I launch, because when I launch, I want all the important things to be finished. I don't want to be, oh, I'll get to it later kind of thing. I want it all done. This way I can go out to the lake, I can cruise around. When my diver is available, we'll do a pressure test. I'll dive it really shallow before we do the pressure test, but it'll be shallow. But it doesn't matter. A submarine doesn't care how deep it is. If it works 10 feet deep, it'll work 100 feet deep. As long as it's been pressure tested, there's no difference. So anyways, that's it. Ciao.